Hello and welcome to the FaceQuote Challenge webinar. My name is Simon Black and I am the team lead for the Evangelists. In today's webinar, we'll first take a look at a short presentation that will discuss the Mendix Platform and how our customers leverage it. And in the second part, we'll build an application based on the Zurich FaceQuote app. But first of all, let's try and take a look at the issue we're trying to address with the platform. And this issue is in every organization. Every organization has these two types of people. They have on the left hand side Kate, who works in the business and understands those business processes. And she's often friends with someone from the IT team, such as Tom on the right hand side here, who is a traditional developer. He likes to develop applications in the latest and greatest technology. Now Kate starts to build an application using Excel or Access. She understands those business processes, but the only tool she has available to her is Access or Excel. So she starts to build these, and over time new people add new functionality, and these get spread around the organization. But these start to leave the business with some headaches and some issues. They don't know how to maintain them, they don't know how to control them, and the regulators are often coming around asking questions about how they regulate these particular processes. So Kate starts to think about if there's another way. So she asks Tom, how could we develop this using your team? And the first thing that Tom usually asks or thinks about is, what coding language do you want to write that in? Do you want to write that in Angular, in jQuery, in PHP, Java? What mobile device do you want to deploy it to? Do you want to have it on Android or iOS or Windows? And all of these questions start to become more and more confusing. Kate just sees lines of code. She doesn't necessarily understand the technology or the decisions behind certain technology. And this often ends in people being very confused as to what they should choose. So Kate comes to the decision with the business unit as to what language they should write it in with the technology team. And the next question that Tom asks is, okay, well, what platform do you want to deploy it onto? Do you want to deploy it onto a cloud platform, onto on-premise? What database would you like to use? And what memory server would you like to use? And Kate doesn't really care, to be honest. She just wants that same Excel application she had that contained all that functionality, all that great logic into a new platform. And this just leaves Tom very frustrated because they can't get over, the IT team can't convey why it's important to those business units, why they make these strategic decisions, and why it's important that in order to make these decisions, they will allow them to scale and to grow and add new functionality. And the business is frustrated because they can't get the required functionality that they want. So they end up back to the Excel Access route and have not gone any further and not improved that process. But this doesn't scale. We can't keep adding new functionality to these Excel sheets and expect them to facilitate the business requirements of the future. We therefore need a new platform that allows us to scale and add and develop at the scale we need. If we don't, we end up in a situation where everyone is frustrated in the organization. The developers are frustrated because they can't develop the features that the business require. The business is frustrated because it's taking too long from the IT teams, and senior management are seeing all of this money being piled into development and no outcome from it. And it's becoming incredibly important that we fix this particular problem. It's because all organizations need to think of themselves as a software-driven company. Everything we do today is dictated by software or applications. We use our mobile phone constantly, and we expect the same level of experience on our work applications as we do from our home applications or personal life. Some good examples of insurers that have been able to drive as a software-driven first company are both Lemonade and Neos. These are technology-first companies that happen to sell insurance. Lemonade, for instance, allows you to get a quote in under 2 minutes. It then allows you to make claims just on your mobile device, And they use intelligent technology such as face recognition and video analytics to be able to detect fraudulent claims. So using technology as their core process and core company to really disrupt the insurance market. And Neos uses a number of smart home sensors such as flood detection and being able to do intrusion detection, so they can make smart detection and smart intelligent decisions around how much an insurance quote should be, or be able to prevent a claim from occurring. If they can detect the water, they can stop a flood occurring beforehand. So being able to proactively maintain the condition of the house or the condition of the insured property. So what if we were able to deliver a platform that combined unprecedented speed, true collaboration, and also embedded control, being able to address all of those needs that we mentioned earlier? That's what Mendax is set out to do, and these are the three goals that we drive the platform around to ensure that we are delivering for what the business and IT require. But we believe that everyone in every organization is a maker. And a maker is someone that can build an application regardless of their background and regardless of their skill. And that's why we have the platform and cover the full application lifecycle to ensure that at every stage of the development process, both the business and IT can collaborate not only on requirements, but also on the development itself. Using our visual modelers, we have two IDEs that are focused at those different types of developers. Those business developers who are used to focusing on Excel Access type applications, through to your traditional developers that like to create code and extensions and debug and be able to integrate. Using the same platform, both of those can collaborate, model and develop together. And some insurers that do this very well using the Mendix platform are the four insurers mentioned here. And all of them use the Mendix platform for a variety of use cases, but I'd like to just highlight four here. The first one is that in the insurance industry, many customers are becoming digital, and the way that they engage with their insurer is very different from a few years ago. A good example of this is Zurich Insurance. They wanted to engage with a new demographic, specifically millennials. And the way they wanted to do this was to engage with them in a fun and intuitive way. So one of the business units came up with an idea, and that idea was to allow users to take a selfie and then get an instant quote for life insurance. They were able to build this in 5 days and test this out in the market and get new insights into what those millennial markets are interested in. Products are also becoming incredibly digital. It's incredibly important for insurers to be able to win new business with affiliates and with underwriters and other brokers. And to do that, a lot of our insurance customers use Mendax as part of their core proposition. Assurant in this case use it to create white label experiences for their technology partners. Technology partners that expect a great looking UX and UI, but also have it embedded in their e-commerce journeys. Also, insurers are becoming more digital. The operations that they do, whether it be on a broker market level or whether it be on underwriting and actuary level, are becoming more and more digital. A good example of this is Chubb. And Chubb is a large insurance company that work with the Mendix platform to build their e-commerce broker portal. So over the last few years, they've been building this core product, and they've got to a stage now where they can very quickly launch new products. In the last 6 months, they've been able to launch 12 new products, enabling them to do everything from quote and buy journey, being able to do rating, being able to do binding of those policies, all integrating into their back-end systems. So it's a real accelerator for Chubb to be able to engage with that broker market and give them a single point of view for all of those insurance products that the broker has sold. And lastly, businesses are becoming digital. Every organization in every business unit needs to be empowered so that they can build the applications to support their business unit. And a great example of this is Zurich Insurance, who through their fast track team were able to engage with the business and empower them to use Mendix. So those developers that were working in Excel, Access or Lotus Notes applications were turned into Mendix developers. And the reason we did this is that they wanted to be able to control what those business units were developing, but also develop them on a new stack and not create those app jungles of the past few years. So hopefully this has given you an insight into those particular insurers and how they can leverage the Mendix platform. In this demonstration, we're going to show you the Zurich FaceQuote app. The Zurich FaceQuote app was built by the Zurich team using the Mendix platform in under 5 days. It was an initial idea by someone from the business who wanted to be able to engage with a new demographic. They wanted to be able to sell more life insurance to the millennial market. And one of the things that millennials love to do is take a selfie. So in this application, we can simply press the button Take a Selfie. It will allow us to select from a number of pictures or take an actual selfie. And using Azure Face Api detection system, what it would do is it actually use some machine learning to actually detect our age. And based on our age, we can then start to use a quoting engine to give us a quote for our particular life insurance. So this one is slightly off at 36, but I'll take that. So let's take a look at how we can actually rebuild this same application using this Mendix platform in under 20 minutes. So using the Mendix platform, we're very easily able to build out the experience that's necessary for this particular application. So we can build out the user interface, data and logic within all one application. So the first thing we need to do is when we open up the Mendix platform is to create a new space for us to collaborate with. So every Mendix project enables us to gather requirements, develop an application, deploy and operate. So that full application lifecycle. And we're here now in the Mendix home portal. This is where we start to build those applications and we manage our full projects. So let's get started. The first thing we do is click the Create App button. This is where we can select from a number of page templates, design patterns, and also full applications to help kickstart our project. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to select the low code AI one. And when we do so, we can select a particular name for our project. So my Selfie low code app. If I hit create, what this will do is it will create us everything we need for our project. It will create us a space so that we can collaborate together. It will create us a space so we can actually develop together using a same version control system. And it will also create us a cloud environment so we can deploy our application and test it out. Once it does so, it will then open us up directly into the Mendax Studio environment. So this is our first modeling IDE, which makes it very easy for people without a background in coding to start building an application. We'll be shortly launching a feature where you can drag and drop an Excel sheet and it will automatically build you the pages and data necessary for that application. So we're in the first concept and first core component of the Mendix modeler, which is the page builder. We can build out pages for both desktop, tablet and also mobile. And using the components on the right hand side here, we can start to build out the experience for our users. We have a number of building blocks, and building blocks are core components that contain styling and widgets and enable us to really quickly build out our experience. You can build out your own organizational brand and look and feel and building blocks to really accelerate those citizen developers. We then have widgets, and widgets are more lower level components, things like text areas, text box, and these things can then be configured to access data. And I'll come back to data later in the presentation. So first, let's build out our experience. So we're going to build out some cards so that we can actually select to choose what we want to do. So we have 4 cards here, and we can easily configure these using the properties on the right hand side here. So we might want a different image, we might want to change some text. So just by clicking, we say take a selfie. So a very frictionless environment for someone that has never developed before to start building. So this is going to be new Selfie. And on the right hand side here, we can now configure this action button to do something. So in Mendax, the way we build logic is by what we call mic flows. Mic flows are step-by-step activities and also a number of decisions. So let's create a new mic flow to create some new data for us to store a picture for our selfie. So let's say new selfie, click create. And now when we do so, we have this empty mic flow here. We have a start event, which is where the activity will start. We'll then have a number of end events for passing back data or being able to end a particular flow. In the middle, we have this blue flashing icon, and this is what we call Mendix Assist. Mendix Assist is our AI machine learning bot, which actually looks at 8 million application models over 15 years of application development and gives you next best suggestions as to what you should build in this flow. It will look at what you've already built in the flow and also what you could possibly build afterwards as well. So giving us a really easy way to encourage and be able to train people as to how they should develop in Mendix. So let's create a new object and use one of these actions. An object is like a record in a sheet of data, for instance, from Excel. And objects are related to what we call entities. Entities describe what data you have. So things like a picture, things like text fields, and so on. We can connect these up using these activities here. So let's connect this up to picture now. And if we click this arrow now, this will take us to the visual representation of that data. So this is the second core concept within Mendax. Sorry, the third one. We've shown the mic flows, we've shown the pages, and this is the third one, which is our domain model. So the domain model allows us to build out our data structure. So any data we're going to interact with, whether it be stored in a database or whether it be stored in memory. For instance, we might want to connect into our third-party system or record application, such as an SAP or Salesforce, and pull back data, but just show that in memory. It's very easy to build out new data. You can simply drag and drop a new entity on here. So we can say note, and we can add new activities such as text, and connect these in to other entities as well. So if we wanted to have multiple notes to a picture, we can add those associations here. Now what happens is the application will now build you the relevant data model when you actually deploy this into the cloud. It will build you the necessary tables and attributes and so on for this application. The next thing we need to do is we need to go back to that flow and we need to add a show page option. So we can actually take a photo of ourselves, we can then process it and use that within our application. So we're going to do that now. We're going to first of all drag on a show page option. And we're going to configure this up to a new page. We don't have that page yet, so we're going to create that page. And using this page builder, we can select from a number of page templates. So these are design patterns allowing you to build out pages for dashboards, lists, forms. And again, these can be fully configured for your own organizational brand, allowing you to really accelerate those citizen developers and empower them in the business to create applications that meet your user experience for your organization. So let's create a new page, and we're going to say new selfie page. Click create. We can click on the arrow to open up the page, and this will now show us the application where we can start to build out that experience. So using the page template, it's got a few containers here where we can drag and drop certain items. So the first thing we're going to do is drag on a building block which allows us to see the photo that they upload. So I'm going to connect that to the data, and a button which will open up our camera and allow us to process that data. The next thing we need to do is drag on a text field so we can actually see that particular data on our app. So we can connect that up to our detected text and use that within our application. The final thing we need to do is when we click this button and when we actually save the actual photo, we need to be able to process it. So we need to create a new flow. So we're going to create a new flow which is going to be process image, click create. And we know that we need to pass it a picture. So we're going to add a parameter of a picture. And if we go back to that particular page, we can now configure that flow for that particular action. So when we save it, we're actually going to execute this particular flow now. Now, as a citizen developer and someone that doesn't have much experience with integration or AI, I might not necessarily know what to do at this stage. But in the platform within Mendix, we have a built-in communication portal. And this allows us to send messages to other developers within our project and ask them to assist us during this development process. So we're going to do that. So if we click on the buzz option here, we can automatically say @ and ask one of our team members to assist us in developing the integration into our Azure API. So we're going to say, I would like some assistance developing the integration to Azure. If we hit post now, what happens is this creates us a notification. The person will also be emailed for that there's a new notification, and they can start to comment on this. So all of those comments go into our project management portal. So if I click on back to the Mendix platform, this is what's automatically created when we went through the create new app flow. It created us this space where we can gather requirements, we can start polls, we can develop together and manage that full application lifecycle. On the right hand side here, we can invite a number of team members. So every project has the ability to invite team members with different roles and responsibilities within the project, such as an end user who's only able to actually view the application, a tester who might be able to actually make some changes, and for instance, a DevOps person who's able to deploy the application. In the sections here, we have the ability to manage out stories, develop our application, deploy it, and also operate it. So as a pro developer, I might see this notification come in, and with every notification comes the context of where the user was at the time. So if we hit the show mic flow option, this will take us into the studio environment to the flow that the user was on when they submitted that particular comment. We also have a feedback button, which allows you to capture ideas, issues, and questions, which is actually embedded into the live application. And I'll show you this later during the demonstration. So as a pro developer, I know it's important that we actually capture these as feedback and we actually process these into actual requirements so we can actually track these against our development and our releases to the servers. So if we click on the create feedback item button, this will create us a new feedback item so that we can process it as a product owner and we can then make this into an actual requirement. So let's go back to the portal now. And when we do so, we can go into the feedback section. So any feedback that is submitted on the project goes into this feedback processing section. And this is where, as a product owner, I can decide, am I going to work on this particular issue or not? And is the team able to deliver it based on their current delivery rate? So if we go into the details of this functionality, we can actually start to process it and start to make it into a new feedback item. It comes with some details about what page the user was on, what browser, and also what user role they were logged in as. And as a product owner, I can now decide to accept it. We can identify it as a feature or bug, and we can then mark it for a particular sprint. So Mendax works in agile methodology, specifically Scrum, meaning that we can make very quick iterations of applications and allow us to communicate much closer with the business and IT teams, having fast iterations of the application so we can make sure we're meeting the business process and meeting the business needs from an organization point of view. So here we have the new story, and we can start to work on that new story using the Mendax Studio Pro. So as mentioned before, the Mendax Studio Pro is a more feature-rich environment focused at more traditional developers, allowing them to do things like integration, allowing them to do things like extensions to their platform. But both of these modeling environments use the same models. So when you make changes in the Studio Pro, those are also reflected in the Studio environment and vice versa. But the Studio Pro has ultimate control over what goes into that main line. So as a traditional developer, I can actually review all of the changes our business users have been changing in the Studio environment and decide whether those go into the actual project or not. because it's important when you're developing at speed and developing with multiple different skill sets. You need to have control as to what goes into that particular version and how that application is deployed and managed. And this is really important to Mendax, is these three pillars. It's the speed, the collaboration, but also the control around how you do those as well. So what it's doing now is it's pulling all those changes that we've made in the studio, and it's now making those available to us to develop those in the Studio Pro offline and be able to commit those back in when we've made those changes. So what it will do now is it will start to sync those changes for us. So here we are. And in the actual studio environment, it locks those changes for those users. So once we're pulling those changes in, it no longer allows them to actually make those changes. So it will sync those changes for us, make them available in the Studio Pro for us, so we can start to develop those functionality out. Once it's synced those changes, it will then make it available for the studio to be able to actually edit those again. So let's go ahead and build out that functionality. So when we go into the project, we can go to the particular page that or microflow the user is on simply by going to the story section. So we've created that feedback item, that story, and that pulled through the context of where the user was. So as a developer, I don't have to search around for where they were, what they were doing. I can simply start to build that functionality. So we have the ability to update the status. So we're going to make this as running. And if we click this action icon here, this will take us to the flow the user was on at the time. So we can start to build out that functionality now. The first thing we need to do is we need to connect into the Azure Face Api detection system. And as a developer, I could go and develop that myself. I could build that using a REST API, or I could build out some code extensions using Java. But most of the time, those type of extensions have already been built. And those are shared on our App Store. Our App Store is our component library, allowing you to build from a number of components rather than from scratch every time. And these components can be either front-end extensions, such as widgets like Google Maps overviews, being able to show visualizations of data, mobile connection widgets, as well as connectors to back-end systems. So things like connectors out to our Azure Face API, Internet of Things connections, SAP connections, so that you can really easily consume data from other sources and be able to leverage it in your application. The one we're going to use is the Azure Face API, and I've already downloaded this into my project so that I can use it for this particular demo. So let's go ahead and add that in now. We have an activity that we can drag on here, and in the Studio Pro environment we have a richer set of activities. Things like creating Java actions, things like integration to REST services and so on, that you might not necessarily want available in the Studio environment for your business users to be using. We want to be able to give that level of control and access and be able to encapsulate certain activities so that they're much more easier to use by our other developers. So here we have the Face API detection system, and we have an activity here. So what we've done is we've taken the complexity out of that activity. We've built all of that connectivity, the mappings, the calls under the hood, and exposed this as a native connector. So any actions or customizations you build can be automatically converted into a native activity in these microflows. So it's going to return back a face based on a parameter of our picture. And that face will contain some details about the descriptions of it and also some information about the age. So we're going to add on some activities here, and the activities is we're going to save the photo first. We're then going to process it, and we're going to then use that text that comes back from the face detection system in our application. So we're going to do a change, and we're going to change the picture and the detected text that we put on our home page. So let's say detected text. And pass the details that we get returned back from the API. As we're going through the application, it's consistently checking our application for errors. So it'll check it for security errors, logic errors, and as we go through, we can double click on these and start to fix those errors. So a lot of these are down to permissions, so I need to enable certain permissions for these flows. So I'm going to do that now. This is making sure that we've given the right level of access to all of our users, because the model knows exactly where certain items are being used and what activities and rights you need to give them. There we are. So we've now run that. We've now built that application. We've built the connections into the Azure Face API detection system. And the next thing we can do is we can actually run this. We can either hit run, which will actually deploy our application into the cloud. It will build us a version, deploy it there. Or we can hit run locally, and this will actually build it locally for us so we can test it out on our own machine. So often you do this before actually committing those into the mainline and into the project. And what it's doing under hood, it's comparing the application model against a current database, if there exists one. It's generating us the pages, the logic, and also the data that's necessary to run this application. Once it's run, we can then scan a QR code using our mobile device, and we can actually view that in our mobile app. We can use native features like the camera, gesture, and so on. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we drag this to the left here, and we open up the View Hybrid app option, we can close down the screen and drag it to the side. On the right hand side here, we have our Mendix developer app, and this allows you to test out native functionalities whilst developing your application. And all you need to do is hit this scan QR code, and we can scan that QR code there. This will now bring up the application as a native application on our mobile device, allowing us to use native features such as the camera, GPS, and also being able to use push notifications as well. There we go. So we have the application now, and as you can see on the right hand side here, we have this option here. This is the feedback widget that I mentioned earlier. So you can either capture feedback whilst you're developing or when you're actually running the application itself as well. And again, it will capture the context of that particular flow. So let's create a new selfie. Hit the new selfie button. We can take a picture. We can smile a lot so we can get a good age. And click OK. And what this will do is it will send that particular result to the Azure Face API detection system. It will store it against the data on our system, and then it will then showcase that to us. So very quickly, in the last 20 minutes or so, we've able to build a new application from scratch, which actually creates us our project management space, a collaboration space, and a space so that we can deploy our application, and also a development area. And we've been able to build our application, the user interface, the data, logic, and connect that into our Azure Face API detection system. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I hope it gives you a good insight into what can be built using the Mendix platform and how you can collaborate with both business users and also IT users to really accelerate and be able to deliver the business results that are required.